Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really incredible story from American history, one you probably didn't cover in school. It's about how a powerful confederacy of 5 nations became 6. And it's a story forged not just in conflict, but through an absolutely epic journey and a brilliant political alliance.
Right, so when you hear about the Iroquois Confederacy today, you almost always hear them called the 6 Nations. But that wasn't always the case. For a long time, they were the 5 nations. So who was that 6th nation, and how exactly did they join this legendary group? Well, that's the story we're getting into.
Okay, so first things first. To really get why this change was so huge, we need to understand who the Haudenosaunee, or as many people know them, the Iroquois Confederacy, were before all of this went down.
For centuries, you had these 5 nations, the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca. Now, they weren't just neighbors. They were bound together in this incredibly sophisticated political and cultural alliance called the Great League of Peace. Make no mistake, they were an absolute powerhouse, basically shaping the destiny of the entire region.
All right, now our story's going to take a sharp turn and head south. We're talking hundreds of miles south, to what we now call North Carolina, because down there, another nation was facing a total catastrophe, a crisis that would kickstart this whole chain of events.
So, in the early 1700s, the Tuscarora were a very prosperous people, with deep roots in their ancestral lands. Life was good, but the relentless pressure from European colonization was about to just completely shatter their world.
It was just one thing after another. Colonial settlers were constantly breaking treaties, just stealing land bit by bit. And then it got even worse. They started kidnapping Tuscarora men, women, and children and selling them into slavery. The pressure just built and built until it became completely unbearable. Something had to give. And it did. The Tuscarora War was short, but it was absolutely devastating. The defeat at Fort Neoroka, it wasn't just a defeat, it was a massacre. Thousands were killed or enslaved. For the survivors, the choice was just horrifyingly stark. Stay and be completely wiped out, or flee their homeland forever.
So they made a choice, and what followed was this truly epic migration. Thousands of Tuscarora refugees literally turned their backs on everything they had ever known, their ruined homes, their ancestors' land, and started this desperate journey north, just hoping to find safety.
I mean, just try to wrap your head around that. A 500-mile journey, on foot, through dangerous territory, with only what you could carry on your back. This wasn't just moving to a new town. This was a desperate flight for survival.
But here's the thing. They weren't just fleeing randomly into the wilderness. No, they had a destination. They knew where they were going. Turns out, the Tuscarora and the Iroquois peoples actually shared a common ancestry and spoke related languages. So they were heading north to seek help from their distant kin.
Now, you might think the arrival of thousands of refugees would be a crisis for the 5 nations. But instead, it turned into this moment of incredible strategic opportunity for everyone involved.
This is where the story gets really fascinating, because this union was born from this brilliant sense of pragmatism. Look at what each side needed. The Tuscarora, well, they desperately needed protection, they needed land. And the Haudenosaunee, they'd been weakened by their own wars and diseases, so they needed to rebuild their population and really strengthen their southern border. It was, when you think about it, a perfect match.
And this whole integration process wasn't just a haphazard, sure, you can stay. Not at all. It followed the really sophisticated diplomatic rules of the Confederacy. The Tuscarora had to formally petition to join. Then 2 of the nations, the Oneida and the Cayuga, sponsored them. And finally, the Grand Council itself made the historic decision to officially adopt them.
And with that formal adoption, we arrive at the climax of our story. The 5 nations were about to be changed forever.
So around the year 1722, the political map of indigenous North America was basically redrawn. That simple number, 6, it represents this huge, profound shift. It marks the birth of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy that we know today.
So what did it mean to be the 6th nation? Well, the Tuscarora were brought in as younger brothers. Now that title gave them land, it gave them the full protection of the entire league, and it gave them a voice in the council, even though they didn't have the same voting power as the original 5. But most importantly, they finally had a secure home.
And the long-term impact of this decision was just immense. I mean, this union made the Haudenosaunee much stronger, creating a better buffer against the colonies. And most importantly, it absolutely ensured the survival of the Tuscarora people, who honestly might have just vanished from history otherwise. Think about that for a second. In an era of conquest and destruction, this was an act of incorporation and preservation. It's an incredible story of diplomacy and resilience. And please, don't make the mistake of thinking this is all just ancient history. It's not. The Haudenosaunee are the Six Nations today. The Tuscarora Nation is a living, breathing part of this confederacy, a direct legacy of that journey that happened 300 years ago.
So it all leaves us with a pretty powerful question for our own time, doesn't it? In a world that's still full of refugees, shifting borders, and questions about what alliances really mean, what can we learn from this amazing story of how 5 became 6?